Thanks for your gracious introduction. Dr. Batra, my colleagues from the profession who are here, the esteemed faculty members of the law schools, and last but not the least, the students who are here in large numbers from different and distinguished law schools of India. Dr. Anurag Batra, he gave us a glimpse of what he's doing, but I think he's doing much more than what he has indicated. He's like a bridge between the business world and the legal world. We as business lawyers, since I am president of the Society of Indian Law Firms are essentially dealing with their clients who are in the field of commerce, trade, and business. Similar is the situation with regard to the general counsel. General counsel, in-house counsel, by whatever name called, they provide legal services, their expertise to their employers who are companies, multinational companies, and companies spread all over the world. So they have a global existence. That is the legal profession. Then the business world. So Dr. Batra is someone who is trying to bring these together. And I think it is a brilliant initiative that needs to be encouraged, that needs to be promoted. And he's already taken certain steps to ensure that same thing happens. He not only disseminates information about the developments in legal world, about the laws, about the judgments, but also as to give recognition to those who deserve that and those who are in the legal profession, whether they are practicing lawyers or they are the in-house counsel or general counsel. Then above all, to recognize the young talent, that is 40 under 40, I think that is a big initiative and a big recognition for those who have become good lawyers at the young age of being under 40. I must share with you that, yes, I was the chair of the jury and I spent 2 full days along with my other jury members who are also very, very distinguished lawyers. 2 days, that was, I think, Friday and Saturday, or Garima or Ashima will tell us. Right from morning till late evening, we were interviewing people. But the first thing, which I still remember, what Dr. Batra told me, because when we started the proceedings of interviewing, then being the chair of the jury, I said, okay, I'm giving so many marks, after the interview was over, so many marks to this candidate. So Dr. Batra immediately got up and he said, Dr. Bhasin, you are the chair of the jury. Your views should come at the end, not in the beginning, because the other members of the jury may get influenced by it. So that shows you the transparency of the entire process of selection. And he's absolutely correct when he said that there was no influence of any nature whatsoever that, okay, this person should be selected, that lady should be selected, so and so should go. No, that did not happen. That was the process. Now, since I'm talking, you see, to the law students, I always enjoy speaking to the law students, and I have made it a practice as the president of the Bar Association of India, as the president of the Society of Indian Law Firms, and as chairman of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators of India. I visit at least 2 law schools every month. During pandemic, it was all virtual meetings. But prior to that, And now subsequent to that, I have started my physical visits also, and that is all over the country. I visit the law schools not to provide any benefit or guidance to the students, but I go there to learn from them. I have put in now 6 decades. I started my law practice in 1962. But still, it is a learning process. And what I want to emphasize on the students is that after you get your law degree, that is the end of your legal education. But that is not the end of legal learning. I don't call it continuing legal education because education part is over. But the learning part is never over. You will continue to learn even when you are practicing your first year in the practice, second year, third year, and all that. It is a continuing process. Therefore, legal learning is one of the most crucial and important part of it, and that will continue to happen even after you complete your formal law education. There are so many areas now which are developing. So many new subjects are coming up. Possibly by the time you finish your law education, some of you are in second year, third year, there will be new areas of law practice, new emerging areas, new regulators, new laws. So you will have to keep on brushing, your skills and brushing yourself up with the latest and contemporaneous developments which are taking place all over the world, global. Because you are not confined just to study of Indian law. When you become lawyers these days, you have to look into what is happening in US, what is happening in Singapore, in Australia, or what is happening, in Middle East. You'll have to look into all those. The foreign lawyers are coming here. Be prepared for that. It's a good development. But it should not be at the expense of the Indian legal profession. And that challenge you can meet only if you are up to that level which they have achieved. In terms of knowledge, we are second to none. That you can take it from me. Indian legal profession is second to none. But in terms of our resources, in terms of technology, we may be lagging behind. Therefore, you have to come up to that level to compete with those people successfully and possibly beat them at it, not only compete, but beat also. And that is one area where continuing legal learning will be required. One thing, it is a very jealous profession. If you are getting into law practice, it's a very jealous profession. It is, you can never share, your time for which you have to devote for your law practice with anything else. And there are no working hours. The working hours may start at 7 in the morning and late night till 12 midnight. You people will be working because you may be in touch with a client in US or a client in Australia, in Japan. So all these things make you workaholic. Yes, I am also a workaholic. Even at this age, sometimes I have my conferences, virtual conferences at 12 midnight or 1 midnight or 2 or at 2 a.m. But that is a part of it. I have chosen to be a lawyer. If I have chosen to be a lawyer, then I must devote my full time and attention. And I particularly pay tribute to our ladies, to the girls who are in the law schools and who will become lawyers. They have to balance their lives like anything, like we men don't have to. Okay, I'm working in my office. I can work from 10 till midnight. I have no other problems, no other issues, no other responsibilities. But as ladies who are in practice, you have so many other responsibilities. Firstly, as a daughter, as a sister, then as a wife, then as a mother, looking after even your in-laws, your own parents, looking after the household, and also looking after your law practice. That is the type of balance. And it's a remarkable thing, you see, which you ladies, you achieve and what you do. And it's a difficult, very difficult exercise. But I have seen that now our young ladies, they are able to cope up with everything. They get married also, they become mothers also. At the same time, they don't neglect their profession. So that sort of a balance which they create is really remarkable. And we have to give full support to that. Because we as men, we don't have responsibilities except to do work for our clients, make money, that's all. Therefore, this you must keep in mind that yes, it is a jealous profession, but for our ladies, it's a very delicate position also. They have to keep a good balance between the two. Use of technology is very good. You people are making use of technology, but always remember one thing, that there is no substitute for a law teacher. Those of you who are students, you must remember this, that technology is there because of human brain, and there is no substitute for human brain. Therefore, you will always need good guidance from the law teachers. Therefore, give them all the respect, take the necessary guidance, even while you are using your technology. Now, there are so many avenues open to you. Law has become a very good profession in terms of good remuneration, good returns on your practice. There are so many options available to you. I don't have to tell you. I think these days everyone knows that either one can become a practicing lawyer, going to the courts, or a corporate lawyer, joining some law firms, doing all the corporate work, or you become an in-house counsel for some big company, multinational company, some business house, or, and which is very important, you may like to become a law teacher. That's very important. You see, gone are the days when our law teachers were not paid properly. I think they deserve to get more, but definitely that is also an area which requires, you see, good inputs from the young lawyers, that they can also become law teachers. I myself, I am a law teacher in the sense that I visit the law schools at the invitation. I even tell my member law firms, whether it is Zia Modi or it is Rajiv Luthra or Nishit Desai, I tell them, you go to the law schools and share your knowledge with the law students, you see, and all that. So that is, we also act like law teachers, but give due respect and regard to your law teachers. And that is areas in civil practice, in law, legal practice also. There is the criminal part, there is the civil part, there is the corporate part in litigation also. Therefore, choose it. But you must have an aptitude for that. Don't just join any particular area of law practice simply because someone tells you to do so. You must have the aptitude. And for having aptitude, 3-4 things are very important. I call them 4 C's. C's means you must have clarity. You must have confidence. You must have commitment. And you must have good competence. You see, 4 C's. These are the 4 C's. Clarity is very important. Clarity means clarity of thought. Unless you have clarity of thought, you cannot have clarity of expression. Because if your thinking is correct, you will be able to convey whatever you want to convey. Therefore, expression. What expression? Both oral, that is verbal, and written. These days, people, and particularly law school, they do not give much importance to legal writing. But my strong advice to you is don't neglect legal writing. In United States, there is in so many universities, they have a special subject on legal writing. Because after all, if you are appearing in a court, the judge will first look at what are your pleadings, what is your petition, what is your application, what is your affidavit, what is it that you have filed. Therefore, that clarity of expression in writing is as important as clarity of expression when you make submissions orally, you see, to the court while arguing matters. Or for that matter, it is equally important in the corporate work also. The agreements that you draft, the conveyancing documents that you draft, the mergers and acquisition, you see, which you think of, they have to be very, very clearly worded documents. And avoid, you see, the difficult English language. Try to use simple language. I will share with you, the law students, if your law faculty teachers, they approach me, what one of our most eminent lawyers of the country, Mr. Jyoti Sagar, has been doing. He has produced 4 modules of use of simple English in the courts by avoiding so many things. You see, when we draft an agreement in the traditional form, we always say, okay, whereas so and so, and whereas, then notwithstanding this, subject to that, all these things, they all come in that. So a common man, when he has to read those agreements, he will not understand. Notwithstanding this, notwithstanding that, subject to use of simple language. And I think you will learn a lot. I will share, you see, the links with you and the whatever that technology is Mr. Jyoti Sagar has conveyed to all the SILF members. His next one is on the use of the expression shall, S-H-A-L-L. What is this shall? Somewhere the court says shall mean may, and somewhere may shall mean shall. He says, what is all this confusion about? Why it can't be just put in simple language? That will be, I think, on 26th of this month. So these are the practical areas, you see, where you need to apply your mind. But once you complete your education, keep in mind the noble tradition, the noble heritage that our profession has, particularly in India. In India, we still don't treat it as a business. We treat it as a profession. Our heritage is so noble, so grand. Mahatma Gandhi, he was a lawyer. Pandit Nehru, he was a lawyer. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, he was a lawyer. Sardar Patel, Dr. Ambedkar, they're all lawyers. This is what the legal profession has given to this country. And we take pride in this fact that the legal profession played such an important and significant role of bringing independence to our country. And that role is not over. Even today, you will find in the union cabinet, in the government, lawyers holding such important positions. Whether it was a Congress government or the BJP government, lawyers have always risen to the occasion by giving up their very, very lucrative practices and joining, you see, the government for getting, you see, a couple of lakhs of rupees per month, whereas they make about 40-50 lakhs per day when they have to appear in the courts and all that, make that money. That is the sacrifice you see with the lawyers, with the members of legal profession, they make. Therefore, remember this heritage, that you also have a responsibility to give it back to the society in whatever form you can, by doing some pro bono work, by creating awareness among the people who are not even aware of their rights, what their rights are. People don't seem to know. Therefore, give it back to the society in any form that you think you can do. That is what I have coined a term for that, professional social responsibility, as against the corporate social responsibility. So there is a responsibility on us as lawyers to give it back to the society. That is our heritage. That is what we have got from our father of the nation and the leaders who gave us independence. And it is our duty to carry on this work and to ensure that our profession does not become a business. It should remain a profession. That is the big responsibility on you. Since students are here, I will take 5 minutes from the organizers. If you have any questions, I would like to respond to that. Only from the students, not from anyone else. Anyone wants to ask anything? Yeah.
Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful speech. My question is, how we as law students can contribute to society? As a law student, when you don't have a license, you don't certainly have credibility, how we can contribute to the society?
Firstly, being a law student itself, you are contributing. You see that you have made a commitment to serve the society. Now, how you can serve the society? You can serve through your law schools. Your law schools have, you see, so many areas where they have pro bono work, some advisory work, some new legislations are coming. By participation in the moot court competition, by not only owning your skills, but also enlarging your own knowledge. Therefore, you can also do a lot by doing some groundwork, by being associated with some senior people who are already in some NGOs, doing some work, giving free advice. For instance, myself and my firm, we do a lot of pro bono work for some NGOs. We give that, so they come to us, and we have interns working, you see, with us as interns from law schools. We always involve them. So there should be that willingness on your part to do that work also. Not just, you see, law in books is different from law in practice. So just try to go beyond the books, you see, and do some good work in law practice. So I wish you all the best, all success in your future, whether you become a practicing lawyer, you become in-house lawyer, you become a corporate lawyer, you become a law teacher, whichever field you choose, I wish you all success. Thank you very much.